Hello, everyone. I am here with my friend Cheri Andrews, who is going to be telling us about some extremely important topics I know almost nothing about, the legal aspects of business, especially as an author. And I was telling Cheri earlier, I had a really difficult accountant and there was a lot of confusion with an LLC. And I was just like, I don't know who to turn to. I don't know who to trust with small business stuff. So now we have Cheri. Welcome.
Thank you, Carolyn. I am so happy to be here.
Would you like to start by telling us a little bit about how you got to where you are now and what got you inspired and interested in law?
Yeah, I'll give you the short version of the very long story. I never wanted to be a lawyer. Was not my goal growing up. I wanted to be a writer or a teacher.
Mm.
But when I graduated college, I spent a year bumming my way through one dead end, um, basically minimum wage job after another. Realized that my degree in English from Mount Holyoke College just wasn't going to get me as far as I had hoped, and decided to listen to my mother and go to law school. So I went to law school and I hated it. And that should have been red flags, should have known. But I persevered. I graduated. I started practicing. I spent 16 years in law firm practice and then 16 years as in house general counsel. And when my cushy corporate gig ended due to corporate reorganization, I just was like, okay, what now? Too young to retire, too old to start over. What do
Were
I
you
do with
enjoying
this?
those jobs or did you hate it as much as law school to be in those positions?
I didn't hate it as much as law school. I did not care for law firm practice largely because it's a very male dominated um, type A old boys club where it was clear that I was just never going to fit in. No matter what I did, I was not going to fit in. My 16 years in corporate was at that point the best career decision I had made. I loved the people I worked with. I loved the organization. I felt appreciated and that my contribution was valued. And so those were good years until we went through the merger and then they weren't so good anymore. So,
You need to get pushed out of the nest. You got too comfy, right?
So yes, and everybody knows this story. Corporate merger, new CEO, change in executive management. And so when I hit that point, it was just like, okay, what do I do now? And it came down to I had had side hustles my entire legal career because the law firm job, the corporate job, they paid the bills, but they didn't fulfill me creatively. And I am a creative at heart. So I was always doing something else, crafts, scrapbooking, direct sales, running a booth at an antique mall, all those kind of things. And so I knew the small business side. And I also knew from being in that world that most of the people I was interacting with had never talked to an attorney, had no idea what they were doing legally, needed as much help as the big companies that have attorneys on staff or big law firms on retainer. But they just weren't getting that information. And so I saw this void in the industry and figured, okay, I can do this. I have the skills, I have the knowledge set. I know what they need to know, what they don't know that they need to know. And so I decided to start my own legal practice. So I am now a solo practitioner, law firm of one, no support staff. If you call me, you get me. And um, if you remember, I said I wanted to be a writer or a teacher when I grew up. Well, now that I have my own practice, I'm doing both. Yes. So I wrote the book, Smooth Sailing, a practical guide to legally protecting your business. And I have started an online education platform for small business owners.
Oh, fantastic.
So, yeah.
I imagine that's probably more affordable than having a lawyer on staff.
It is way more affordable. way more affordable.
I love how you bring those two sides together. Like your story is so similar to mine right up until the law school part. Like, yes, degree in English, wanting to be a writer, going through a whole bunch of minimum wage jobs and going, this is not working. But yeah, my answer to that has been very different and less lucrative, I think. But it's really cool that you took that knowledge that you have of us, like small business creative types with the law background. So it's a really unique perspective that all of us really need.
And, that's one of the things I love working with creatives because it is a unique market with special needs that other, small businesses don't necessarily have the same needs. So.
Yeah. So what do you think is the most important thing that someone who is making being an author a career, like first step, what should they know about legal protection?
For authors, your first step is understanding copyright and making sure that you have filed the copyright registration for your book or whatever you're authoring. Because the way copyright works at this point changes in 2019 in the case law. The Supreme Court decided that you cannot sue for copyright infringement without having your copyright registration in place. It doesn't mean you can go file an application and then sue. You actually have to have that application have gone through the process and have that certificate of registration in hand before you can file a lawsuit for infringement.
And that's a big change because we're used to the idea of, well, once you write something, you have the copyright. You don't have to file something. But now you might have the copyright, but not a defendable copyright.
Exactly. You own the copyright, but you can't protect it. You can send out cease and desist letters. You can, make stink, but you can't sue somebody without that piece of paper. So.
Yeah, that's very important to know. And I think back in the very beginning of my career, people used to tell you to like mail a copy of your manuscript to yourself as proof that it was yours. And I always thought that was probably not legally defendable. What do you think? Is that ridiculous, or is there a place for that?
It's an urban myth, and it is totally bogus. It's basically one of those things that gets perpetuated, but it has no basis in fact or law. If you mail a copy of your manuscript to yourself, all it proves is you mailed a copy of your manuscript to yourself. It doesn't establish an authorship date. It does not establish a copyright. It used to be called the poor man's copyright. It doesn't do that. It does not establish the rights. The rights that you get when you file a copyright registration, the right to file a lawsuit, the right to claim statutory damages, the right to claim attorney's fees. Mailing yourself a copy of your manuscript doesn't get you any of those things.
Okay. So how much does it cost to file for a copyright?
So let's look at it from the point of view of a book. Whether that's fiction or nonfiction doesn't matter. What matters is whether you wrote everything and there's no other contributors, or whether there's something in your book that has to be disclaimed. The filing fee with the United States Copyright Office under what's called the single application, which means it's one author, one work, and no other contributors of any kind. The filing fee with the United States Copyright Office is $45.
That's reasonable.
Yeah,
that's worth it.
Filing fee on the standard application, where you actually have to disclaim, say you have a foreword written by somebody else, or you have stock photos or images or charts in your book, any other material contributed by someone else, then you have to use a standard application, and that filing fee with the U.S. Copyright Office is $65. So if you want to file on your own, really all you're paying is the filing fee. If you hire an attorney to help you, then you're going to pay that attorney's fees. For me, it's one of the lower cost things I do because I really don't charge that much. For me, it takes about an hour of my time. For someone new going in and looking at this form, it could take them a bit longer to read and understand what's required. And sometimes it's not as clear as it might be. And you might find it that, you're better served by having an attorney and somebody who knows what they're doing file this. The thing is, if you file it wrong, the filing fee is not refundable and you just have to start over. And since the process from filing the application to actually getting the certificate of registration typically takes around 6 months, you don't want to wait 6 months, find out you did something wrong, have to start over. And now by the time your copyright's actually filed, your book's been out there for a year. And who knows how much infringement has happened in that time that you couldn't do anything about.
Ooh, yikes.
Yeah.
So that makes me think of another question. Another thing that comes up a lot of times in that urban myth area is using song lyrics and poems and things that belong to someone else in your work. The rumor is that you can use a small portion without seeking permission. Do you think that's accurate or ridiculous?
When you're talking about song lyrics and poems, because the original work is so short, the opportunity for what's called fair use is extremely limited. It's very, very difficult. And with something like song lyrics, because there are so many different copyrights held in song lyrics, you have the person who wrote the lyrics, the lyricist, you have the person who composed the music, you have the compilation of, some performer actually performing that song. And you may have producers and other people back there. To get permission from all of them is an undertaking, to say the least. So the short answer to your question is poems and songs, they're too short. There's no such thing as fair use, which is oversimplifying it. But typically I would say this: the title of a poem or a song does not get copyright protection. So if you want to mention a song in your book, mention the title, mention the artist, mention the time frame, just don't use the lyrics themselves.
So hypothetically, if I already published a book that had a stanza of a song in it, how much trouble am I in?
Well, first off, that depends on the owners of the copyright finding out you did it. So, that plays into how much media attention has your book gotten, how many copies have you sold, all of those kind of things play into the likelihood that the owners of those copyright are ever going to find out that you did it. Number two, when they find out you did, do they think this in any way harmed them? Do they care? Are they going to make a stink about it? Some copyright owners will make a stink about anything and everything. Others kind of, they just shrug and be like, whatever. Or maybe they're just flattered you included their lyrics in your book. So it really depends on too many factors to, put a number on.
I think it's so important, that first piece that you said. The mindset of promoting a book can be so challenging to begin with. So if there's anything that you have where you're like, I kind of hope nobody finds out about this, like, how much is that going to hold you back from like going all out for your book and getting it out there and making noise? You're going to be holding yourself back for that fear.
You might not even realize you're holding yourself back for that fear, but you totally will be. And it's not worth it. I mean, I know, like, I've read books that have included song lyrics. I don't know if the authors went and got all the permissions or not. I'm going to assume Firefly Lane probably did, because otherwise they wouldn't be putting it in a movie. But I mean, that was a particular book where there was a lot of song lyrics or a lot of songs mentioned. And if you got the permissions, then great. You can shout from the mountaintops and become a bestseller and be, and not have to worry about are the owners of these copyrights going to come after me?
But the
Whereas
idea of getting those copyrights or that permission sounds like really overwhelming.
it's a process and it will hold up your publication date likely, but it can be done.
Is
You
that
know,
something that an attorney can help with, like finding the right people and wording the request and things like that?
yes, you would want somebody actually far more versed in copyright than I am. And I do know a few attorneys who this is really where their livelihood is. But yeah, they can help you seek permissions. And it's an important thing. I mean, and it's only fair because think about it this way. They wrote a song, they want to get the royalties and the rights from their song, the same as you just wrote a book and you don't want anybody copying your stuff and using it without your permission.
Absolutely. Very true. And Kim says this comes at a great time because she's thinking about adding lyrics to her book. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. So many of us are in that position. I just wrote a book that's about a rock star, and there's a 90s song in there that's like a crucial plot point. And yeah, I've just been going with I hope nobody notices. I put in who it is, so hopefully, they're getting credit. But did I ask permission? No.
Yeah, see, and if you want to be a bestseller, I would say get the permissions. This is the
Yeah.
bottom line is, if you're only planning on selling 100 copies to your closest friends and family and you don't care, then fine. But if you really want to promote your book and get on those bestseller lists and get TV interviews and all the fun things, then get the permissions or don't use the lyrics.
Oh, Kim has another question for you. Passing on book royalties to children, creating like an author estate. That's something I've never thought about.
That is called a literary estate. And there are companies who this is what they do for a living is represent authors for their literary estates. Because our copyright is the lifetime of the author plus 70 years, we can will to our heirs the rights to the copyright rights of our book. So you write a book, you want to put in your will who gets the rights to that on your death. But then you might also want to specifically, especially if your book is hitting bestseller lists, looks like it's going to be not a flash in the pan, not it's good for a year and it's gone, but it's going to have some staying power. Then you want to make sure to name a literary executor, somebody who understands copyright and royalties and licensing and all of the things that you can do as a copyright owner so that they can take care of that once you have passed
Yeah,
and
like they
keep
want to do like
getting
a
the income.
reprint, another edition. If you become a classic author that everybody wants to reference.
And even think about as simple as children's books. Dr. Seuss has a huge copyright portfolio and literary estate that's being managed. Any of the authors that you think of as kind of timeless. And I will say it applies much more to fiction than nonfiction because for most of us writing like business books, for example, that advice is time limited, and what I write today in a legal business book may be completely out of date 10 or 15 years from now. So it won't matter so much that copyright extends 70 years beyond my death because it's highly unlikely the book is still going to be on shelves at that point. But for fiction, that stuff lasts forever. I mean, it doesn't go out of date.
Is there a way to extend that copyright of author's life plus 70 if the estate is managing it? Can they continue it indefinitely?
No. After the end of the author's life, 70 years, then your work goes into what's called the public domain, and it's available for anybody to use freely at that point.
Very interesting. Okay. So your book, Smooth Sailing, that has a ton of great information for all different kinds of small businesses, including authors. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is. And I'm working on the second edition right now, which is going to actually have an entire chapter on copyrights and delve a little bit into some of what we're discussing here and literary estates and things like that.
Okay. Now, when one talks about copyright, the term trademark always is quickly followed in the mind. My understanding is that you cannot copyright a title, but you could potentially trademark a title. What are the differences between those things?
Okay, so a book title in and of itself is not subject to copyright or trademark protection. Where a book title becomes subject to trademark protection is if that title is actually your brand. So it identifies your business as the source of goods or services. And, to give you an idea of what I mean, let's say what you write are cookbooks and you're publishing under the name The Fancy Chef. And every book is titled The Fancy Chef : something. So it's The Fancy Chef on the Grill, The Fancy Chef Baking, The Fancy Chef Let's Do Desserts. It becomes a series. Now The Fancy Chef is a brand. And so that title becomes subject to trademark protection. But otherwise, no. Book titles don't get protection, copyright, or trademark. And in fact, if you go and look on Amazon, pick a title, you may find that there's 3 or 4 books with that same title. And that's why, because they're not subject to trademark protection or copyright.
That reminds me when I put out my book launch planner, I was advertising it in a Facebook group and somebody was like, well, when I look up book launch planner, there's 2 other ones. Maybe you should change your title. And I was like, 2 other ones? That's so low competition. That's fantastic news. No, I'm not going to change my title. If you search for that and I'm one of the top 3 results, heck yeah.
And that's why people do it. And, actually, Smooth Sailing, I was originally going to title it Launch, and it was about the idea of launching a business, except that there's somebody else with a famous business book titled Launch, and I would have been up against him as competition. I was kind of like, okay, maybe not.
Well, there's a lot you can do with your subtitle when it comes to especially nonfiction books, which I love. So Smooth Sailing doesn't necessarily tell you that it's a book about law, but you probably have a subtitle there that says like,
yeah, the subtitle is The Practical Guide to Legally Protecting Your Business. And that says it all.
Yeah, and that will come up in search with those search terms and stuff. So that's great. I really appreciate how knowledgeable you are about this niche of writing, because here I am with like my backlog of legal myths and questions of the last 20 years. You could clear them up for me. So why don't you tell us about the membership? What does that look like? And has it already launched?
So the Wise Owl Academy is an online learning platform that I have launched as a membership. It's basically you pay a monthly fee, you get access to everything that's in there. It takes the topics of the book and they are the core content. So those are all available to you the minute you join. And so then instead of just reading a book, you have videos, you have worksheets, you have templates, you have all of the different ways of learning and actually absorbing and making sense of this information. Then I have office hours once a month where I'm online. People can ask me questions. It's a Zoom Zoom call, and we cover whatever is coming up in your business. And once a month, I'm adding new content. And just to give you an example of some of the new content that I have put out recently, we've talked about disclaimers and what you might need on your website to protect your business. We've talked about non-disclosure agreements, when and where they're appropriate, which is pretty much anytime you're giving out information about your business that you want to keep confidential. You want to use that before you're pitching an idea with somebody or starting a collaboration, before you actually nail down the terms of the collaboration itself, which would be subject to a separate collaboration agreement. You have the NDA to make sure that nobody's going to steal your ideas and run with it before you even get this collaboration off the ground. And we've talked about artificial intelligence, and specifically ChatGPT, and how to use that legally and safely in your business. So those are just some of the topics that have come up in the monthly add-ons. So it's a really, really great value. It's always going to continue to grow. And it's a lot of fun.
That's fantastic. Where can people go to check that out and learn more about the membership?
So they can go to my website, which is cheriandrews.com, and that's CHERI Andrews.com. And there's a tab at the top that says Wise Owl, and you go there, or maybe it says Academy. I can't remember what it says
now.
You'll know it when you see it. You click on there, it gives you information about the Wise Owl Academy and leads you into the sign up pages.
Yeah, I see Wise Owl Academy here.
Yeah.
And the link to your homepage is in the description, so people can also go there to access it. And the book, Smooth Sailing, highly recommend. So I should add a link for that on Amazon as well. When is the next edition supposed to come out?
I'm writing right now, so it won't be. It will not be until sometime in 2024, and I have not yet determined that. It's really a matter of when am I going to say there's enough and I can stop, because every time I think I'm done, I come up with more topics that I would like to add. And when I decide to add topics, that means research time, writing time, editing time.
Yes. All right. I won't hold my breath on that one. I'll get the one that you have out already. That's super valuable and much lower cost than consulting an attorney directly. What final advice would you like to leave people with? What do you think is something we haven't covered that's like, you really should know this?
I'm just going to say this one. In your business, even if your business is being an author, take it seriously enough to get the help you need. Don't try to do this alone. I always talk about the LIFT professionals: legal, insurance, finances, taxes, the 4 areas where a single mistake can basically get you in a lot of legal hot water, can bankrupt your business, could land you in jail. There's just too much risk there. And if you find the right professional to help you, any money you spend with them is going to save you so much more down the road and make you feel so much more confident about your business that you'll be able to build more quickly and actually be more profitable when you don't have that worry and that doubt hanging over your head.
Yeah, so, like you were saying earlier, where that subconsciously your fear could hold you back from fully promoting yourself.
And, it's very, very true in those areas, legal, financial, where this is really out of the realm of most small business owners, skill sets. And a good attorney will just make that part of your life just so much easier. And so I consider it an investment in your business that's worth every penny. And it doesn't have to be me. Just find a good attorney, because it really will make a difference in your business and your life.
Very nice. And when it comes to working with you, you work within a particular area Like, I think that's so confusing too with these internet businesses of like, do I need to find a lawyer who's in my state? How much does that matter? That kind of thing.
Okay, so here's the part that's interesting about that. If the matter is based on state law, then you need an attorney in your own state. So that's contracts and that kind of stuff. You know, setting up a business. So setting up your LLC, writing the contracts for who you're going to deal with, that kind of stuff. You need somebody in your state. If it's based on federal law, then any attorney versed in your area can help you. So copyright, trademark, patent, those are all federal laws, which means, and I don't deal with patents, not me, but any attorney who's versed in copyright, trademark, or patent can help you. It doesn't matter where they're located.
Oh, that's very good to know. And it sounds like if somebody reaches out to you for help, you would be able to point them in the right direction if it wasn't your area or you weren't the right person.
Absolutely. And I've done that a fair amount. I can help people file copyright applications all day long, but when it comes to the licensing and, you know, further side of copyright, I have copyright attorneys that I send people to. I can file your trademark application, but I don't do litigation. So if you end up in trademark litigation in front of the Trademark Trial and Appeal Board, I would refer that out to somebody else. If you come to me and you have a question about state law, even if I don't know somebody in your state, I can help you find your state bar association at least and get you hooked up with somebody that way. So.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being here, Cheri, and spending this time with us and answering all of my questions with no prep. This is, what we do on this show. I just ask questions as they come to me, and I don't tell you what they're going to be ahead of time. So really appreciate you being here.
You know, this is the stuff that I love talking about. I could do this all day long. I don't need to prep for this. So this is great.
That's how I feel about funnels. All right. Well, we will wrap it up there. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and I'll see you next